Hello and welcome to The People's AI, presented by Vana. I'm your host, Jeff Wilser, a journalist who covers the intersection of crypto and AI for CoinDesk and the like. And today I'm joined by two of the sharpest minds in the VC world that's looking at decentralized AI, Alex Adagio, investment director at YZI Labs, and Daniel Barabander, GC and investment partner at Variant Fund. And I'm proud to partner with Vana to bring you this podcast. Vana's mission is user-owned data to help create user-owned AI. And as I think you'll see from our conversation with these two VCs, there's a lot of hype and froth in the crypto plus AI space right now. But Vana is one of the legit projects that's building something of substance, an ecosystem of data marketplaces that will help build better AI models. And to give you a peek behind the curtain, I am recording that was actually a real curtain here in my hotel room. I am recording this during the week of Consensus in the field at Toronto. As I'm sure most listeners of this podcast know, Consensus is the year's flagship Web3 conference. And both last year and this year, it is my honor to produce and host the AI Summits at Consensus, covering all things decentralized AI. And one thing I've found is that people who come to Consensus are really interested in how VCs are seeing the space. It's always a packed crowd when we have the VCs on stage giving their thoughts. People want to know, what's just buzzy silliness? What are the worthy projects and use cases? What business models make the most sense? What do they want to see out of founding teams? So we're bringing a lot of that energy here today on the podcast. First, we have a conversation with Alex Adagio, investment director at YZI Labs. Alex gives a very clear-eyed, sober look at the decentralized AI space. He sees a ton of potential, but he also noted that at a recent conference, 75% of the pitches he receives are from the crypto plus AI world. The space is flooded and there's a ton of energy, which of course has pros and cons. He ticks off some of the use cases that most excite him, and he even gives some bonus advice of how AI is helping the actual process of his investing. It's making him work faster and more efficiently. And I think even if you're not a VC or an investor, the hacks and tricks he shares are things you can likely be inspired by in your own workflow. And then we have a conversation with Daniel Barabander, GC and investment partner at Variant Fund. Daniel and I spent a good amount of time getting into AI agents and on-chain agents. What does it look like? And we get into some pretty spicy questions like, do AI agents really need to spend cryptocurrency? Do they need tokens? That's a favorite working theory in the Web3 space, but is it really necessary for agents to work? We explore. We talk about Daniel's theory of composability and why that's so important in the space, as well as covering the verticals and layers of the tech stack where he sees the most promise. Between the two of these conversations, we cover a lot of ground, and I think anyone who's at all into the decentralized AI space will find a ton of good nuggets and worthy rabbit holes, to mix metaphors here. So let's get into it. Let's start off with my conversation with Alex Adagio, investment director at YZI Labs. Alex, welcome to The People's AI.
Thanks, Jeff. Pleasure to join you.
So I'm sure you are constantly seeing new pitches, new projects, new startups that are all kind of in the intersection of Web3 and AI, crypto AI. I know your desk is just rampant with those. How are you seeing this particular moment right now in the decentralized AI space? How are you viewing the landscape? Well, I know we're going to get kind of nuance here eventually, but at a very high level, where would you describe this intersection of crypto and AI?
Yeah, totally. I think we're at an inflection point. This year, we've seen a tremendous number of new teams trying to crack this space. I think over the past 12 months, I believe initially we were still in the incipient part, but now we're really seeing a lot of deal flow coming from that particular vertical. In fact, just a recent reference point, when we were at Token 2049, We had a demo day, which we organized in partnership with the BNB Chain team. And the number of pitches, I think it was perhaps about 75% were coming from within the crypto AI space.
Wow. What's your takeaway from that? Is it too much? Is it just the right amount? Is it frothy, or is this kind of normal and that's kind of the name of the game at this stage in the space's life cycle?
I think it's a combination of different messages and observations that we're getting from that. First and foremost, we see that more people are using AI not just as a kind of daily tool to augment their performance, but also actually building alongside it and on top of like AI primitives, as well as actually developing completely new AI primitives that are very specific and relevant for the crypto industry. And I'm talking here about agents that are very relevant to DeFi, or agents for DAOs, or like a combination of different agentic frameworks. It could be also stuff that is very important and relevant for data and analytics businesses, because marrying the AI with the data source that we have in blockchain, which is a lot, produces some really interesting and useful products to be used by investors like us, but also consumer like retail. It's a lot easier now to create investment theses based on large amounts of data that you can crunch through very quickly using some of the AI technology that's available. Interesting.
I definitely want to bookmark that and come back in a bit to how you're using AI to actually help you in your investments. Before we go there, you're just seeing 70 to 75% of pitches are in this crypto AI space. That's remarkable. Of all of that, what would you say are the use cases or like the verticals, if you will, that excites you most in this space?
Yeah, I think we are very interested to see novel application of AI that's very specific and useful in crypto. But likewise, it could be the other way around, where we would observe some more traditional sort of AI companies that might benefit from having a crypto layer on top of them. So, for example, we've seen this quite a bit over the past year, where you had companies like Hugging Face, which are very Web2 specific, and then people within crypto understood quite quickly that actually layering a crypto incentive design on top could produce some interesting results. So having that actually is very useful and very unique to crypto, which you cannot achieve with traditional means, in Web2. Incentivizing people to contribute either on the data side, on the model side, or a combination of those to those kind of platforms is quite difficult to do in the legacy world. While Web3, it's very easy. It's actually what we've been set up to do. Why we have tokens is actually to augment businesses, ideas, by creating a community around that. You can bring different people from all across the world, inherently borderless, and unify them with one incentive program.
Zooming out a little more, how are you thinking about the overall tech stack of AI plus crypto, and kind of what, like, going from the most foundational layer up to apps and agents, where do you see the most promise in the kind of combination of AI and blockchain tech?
Absolutely. I love this question because it makes you think very broadly and from first principles. So let's think about how the AI value chain is set up. Whether that's in crypto or otherwise, AI is fundamentally one set of like different parts of a value chain. So starting with the data is very important. Always has been since the advent of how we do AI, machine learning algorithms. We need a lot of high quality data. I think there were very initial promises from within crypto that it will allow us to get better data more accurate data that you can only achieve by having crypto and blockchain technology with it. So, for example, data labeling. You can do data labeling in the traditional Web2 world. It's been done successfully as well, but it's a lot easier to do it in crypto. If we had the blockchain technology back when we really were starting doing machine learning at scale and trying to produce this large amounts of labeled data, it would have been easy to incentivize people to contribute to a data labeling exercise at the global scale, right? So I think that's important. Where we're moving right now is having more specific data. So data that would be super valuable at this phase of AI would be something that is very hard to come across, on the open domain. For example, label data from the medical space. If you get like 1,000 experts that are highly specialized in reading and look at X-ray images, you would want them to, that sort of data labeling, you'd want it to get to it as soon as possible. And if you have a borderless technology and you can find 1,000 people that have medical degrees and are experts at looking at X-ray data, you could probably build this community with crypto a lot easier.
That's interesting.
Incentivize them.
That's interesting, and a different kind of angle of data coming from the health professionals. I think clearly I'm biased here. They're my partner in this podcast. I think what Vana is doing is super interesting, of incentivizing people to effectively band together, to have leverage to have their data be used in a smart way to eventually train AI and get compensated for it in ways that otherwise be like overlooked or ignored, right? So whether that's social media data or smart car data, health data, as you point out, that feels like an advantage. If it works, blockchain incentives would be able to help people get data kind of from the edges. It's tough for like the open AIs of the world to get, and then eventually kind of build this richer data set that can kind of create eventually better models. So that to me seems like a pretty compelling use case.
Totally. Vana is a portfolio company of YZI Labs. We're very fortunate to be working with the team, and even CZ is personally involved as an advisor to the project. So I subscribe to everything you just mentioned. There is lots of very specific type, very valuable data categories that will come out of this, and I think we stand, as you mentioned, if it works, we stand to benefit a lot by putting those together, crypto and traditional way of getting that data.
You were about to, I think, head on and shift to the next kind of use case or next area of the tech stack.
So coming back to that value chain, once you have the data, you want to use it in a model. So you want to feed the model with that data to train it. I think crypto has been, as a space, we've been quite good at exploring that part as well. The promise that we saw with AI technology, at least some of the initial players, was that it will be an open, very open source endeavor. And I think that didn't really materialize.
Depends how you define open. If by open you mean closed, they're crushing it.
Indeed. If you swap like synonym for an antonym,
yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, 6-1.
But I think where our industry, crypto has been very good at is trying to keep tabs on that, trying to actually open it up. And I think that has, to some extent, been very successful, because now we can take some of the open source models that we got access to, Llama, DeepSeek, all sorts of other perhaps smaller models, and then we bring them in this incentive framework that I mentioned earlier, that you can achieve mostly with having a crypto angle to this, and you can produce something really interesting. So we've seen a lot of teams building that, like trying to really like aggregate all of the resources that we have in the open source and making it such that it's very easy for people to build on top of them. So I would say we've done that as an industry with relatively good amount of success. I think as we go forward, probably we'll see less new models being developed from scratch, but at least within the crypto AI space. But it will be a lot like inheriting the work that has been done in Web2 and augmenting it with the tools and the technology that we have in Web3.
I like that take. What are the use cases or types of projects that you think not enough people are talking about?
I think, there has been a lot of, definitely a lot of hype around agents and agentic frameworks. And the reason for that is because it was very easy to spin them up, and a lot of the culture that was created around meme coins has been translated into sort of the agent space as well, where it's very easy to launch one. It kind of lives on Twitter. It interacts with other people, generates a lot of buzz. But
it's a fun story. It is one of the most funsy stories in crypto in a while. So you can see why it gains so much traction. But I guess the question is how much utility is there?
Correct. I think the utility is something that we're still missing.
Yeah.
We think that perhaps not all agents require a token. At least we don't see the utility of having a token attached to an agent, other than it being very, speculative in nature, and going back to the same discussion that we had within the meme coin mania phase of our industry. So I think some parts of the agent space or agentic applications is very much not talked about, and that's something that we are trying to look into very closely within the remit of the DeFi space, for example. I think you can think of agents in different ways. Like the holy grail of having an agent that you can give some money and it goes and finds alpha in the market and generates outsized returns is probably not going to materialize. The reason why I say that is because we have had the same concept. So going back to first principles, where if you build some sort of an algorithm that does trades sort of in some semi-automatic or fully automatic fashion, and it generates returns on the back of finding alpha opportunities in the market, the moment you make that available to a lot of people, the market starts to going back to equilibrium, and all of those arbitrage opportunities basically close out, because now everyone is chasing those. So I think the same concept probably applies here. If everyone has very super smart agents running around trying to find that alpha, probably those opportunities will be less and less often, and therefore the market would eventually become somewhat efficient if there's billions of agents doing that. However, I think where agents are very interesting and super helpful, and I talk here from my personal experience, is, for example, when I went through the DeFi summer, I did all of that yield farming. It was quite manual. You had to go click that, do this, connect, approve these transactions, loop things out. All of that can be automated I think with all of the technology that we have right now, all of the agentic frameworks, fairly efficiently. And those types of execution, mainly agents, would be incredibly helpful for people that try to be very efficient in on-chain DeFi.
Totally agree. I think that one of the reasons DeFi has not really taken off is for the normies, it's still just hard. It's complicated. It's an intricate process. A lot can go wrong if you're not pretty careful about it. And so the idea of AI removing friction there and making it turnkey for normies is super intriguing. I think the biggest hurdle for me, we got to work on that phrase, spelled DeFi, DEFAI, but clever, except DeFi with an A is pronounced precisely as DeFi with no A's. so we got to work on that. Anyway, switching gears a bit, Alex, you mentioned 75% of pitches are in this space. What do you use to kind of sniff out, like, all right, these are the worthy projects, or this is clearly garbage, right? We're not asking you to reveal your entire playbook here, but talk a bit about your process for evaluation when you're looking at startup teams, and then maybe any advice you might have for the listeners out there who are building in the crypto AI space and are kind of wondering what you're looking for.
Of course. And we can be very transparent how we approach this. As an early stage investor, we mostly focus on pre-seed and seed stages of fundraising. We can do a bit later as well, but our main focus are those stages. For us, I think the largest weight we put on the team itself. So that's the first thing that we actually try to evaluate is the team background. And just like you have product market fit, we think there is a team or founder to product fit. We do think that the teams that have the right motivation and right background are more likely to succeed than those that do not. So for decentralized AI specifically, they need to have one of the two, at the very least, have some background or interest or show motivation in crypto, and then the other is AI. I think generally right now, a lot of the teams that have tried to come, just like with any other major themes that we've seen over the past cycles in crypto, we get a lot of tourists. As you said, there's a lot of people trying to fundraise on the back of this. Some have obviously the wrong motivation, which is to make a quick return. Those are fairly easy because once you start discussing and trying to know the team, and that we put a lot of time actually into that part, getting to know the team and the motivation, why they really think they're the best place to build what they're building, actually would get you probably more than half of the way through to making at least to some extent an initial assessment and evaluation of the project. Of course, then after we get comfortable with that, we look at the product and the technology itself. But a lot of the times we see that founders that are open to pivoting are actually quite successful as well. So you don't have to have an idea straight out of the bat that, it's probably quite hard to come up with something that based on additional information that will inherently be available to you as a founder later on, you don't correct course to some extent or even pivot altogether. So we like that openness to pivoting. Some of the most successful investments that we've done were also results of pivot. We invested in the team, they started building something, they decided that won't work out, and then they pivoted. Even outside crypto AI, one example is, for example, the Celestia team, which we invested back in the day. They started, definitely didn't start as a data availability because that category was not even a thing back then.
Yeah.
So similarly here, I think in crypto AI it's very important to build something that's sustainable over the long term. We think that the fundamental principles of building a startup still applies, which mean that as a founder, you'd want to build something that produces revenue over the long term. Even though it might not be profitable in the short term, in the long term, like users and revenue is still very important. So the team, the product, the novelty of the technology, the business model, all of those come into play when we evaluate any opportunity that comes across our desk.
That's super helpful. As we wrap up, last couple of questions for you. You mentioned that you use AI in your investment research. Can you tell us a little more about that? I think even listeners, even if they're not investors per se, or certainly not VCs per se, I think we all have the kind of work that everyone's trying to figure out how to be more productive with AI. So I'm curious of what your hacks are.
Totally. So it first and foremost, I think all of these large language models are very good at synthesizing lots of data, lots of like sources of different things. So anything that we have access as an investor, it could be links to say an Ocean page or might be a blog post, or there's might be different write-ups that the founder has done on Twitter, and so on. All of those very easy to aggregate into a very quick summary and actually find some sort of like links or discrepancies between different parts of the story. So just synthesizing data produces very significant amount of productivity gains. Us as an investor getting access to lots of, and we are very fortunate as an investor to get a very large amount of deal flow. So just synthesizing all of those data sources across different projects is very helpful by using, applying these LLM solutions. So that's first. Second, even after you synthesize, perhaps like doing research, I think LLMs have been really good at helping. Imagine you have a research assistant that you can ping 24/7 to answer any questions, even the most the most trivial or we always say there is no stupid question, but to me sometimes I come up with some questions that I think might be stupid to someone. So imagine like you read through a white paper of a highly complex technical project, and you want to ask a specific question for a specific subset of that. Well, we have a solution for that, which is the LLMs. You can feed all of that and then ping it particularly where there might be some specific questions where you want some more clarity. That's helpful to go through a lot of those materials very quickly as well.
That's a great one. I do a version of that all the time. That's great. Alex, last question for you. Give us a prediction or two of the Web3 AI space, decentralized AI space, whatever you want to call it. Maybe let's say a 6-ish month prediction, so nearish term a space is going to be shaking out, and then let's go fun, like 1 to 5 years.
So in the near term, I think up to a year, I think we'll see a lot of even larger number of teams building in AI. The reason is because the barriers to entry are getting lower and lower, or they're completely broken apart every month.
Yeah.
As these LLMs become stronger in terms of coding, but not only, you would be able to have teams that are completely driven by the motivation and their goal, rather than the technical ability to write code in different capacities, that will come and try to build. And that's not necessarily bad. We'll still have to have the right infrastructure and tools for these teams to develop highly secure products. But I think it does lower the barrier, so we'll have even more teams trying to build. And crypto is specifically good at this because it offers a completely clean slate for you to innovate. And now because the tools are so easy to use for anyone, we have 8 billion people in the world, even if like a subset of those decide to suddenly build, and I bet not most of, I'm sure people that don't even have a computer science degree might be interested in trying things out. Some of those will stick. And we do need some creative ideas and innovation to come out in order to propel our industry forward, especially at the application layer where I think we're still kind of lacking killer applications. Hopefully we'll come out of that. So that's in the near term. I think we'll just see that growth rate continue and probably become even steeper. And
All
as I
right.
mentioned at the beginning of the call,
For better or worse. And now for the long term, let's have some fun.
yeah,
3 to 5 years out.
for the long term, I think we will see companies, both in crypto but also otherwise, unicorns that will be run by teams of less than 10 people. So you'll have highly successful business with billions in revenue or fee, whatever other income, volume, whatever metric you'll be tracking that took dozens of people to build and maintain and run. It will be done by like a few people, like a very small team, highly augmented by this AI technology that we've been so excited about.
Totally agree. Well, in that world, I will see you on the beach. We'll have plenty of time on our hands. We'll just AI is providing for us all. Alex, all kidding aside, really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks a lot. Best of luck to you guys in the future. Take care.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Jeff.
So that's the end of part one, my conversation with Alex Adagio, investment director at YZI Labs. And one thing I love doing for perspective is seeing how two different smart people in this space are answering similar or even the same questions. It gives some good perspective and helps you spot themes and trends. This is why I'm thrilled to also speak with Daniel Barabander, GC and investment partner at Variant Funds, and we'll get into that conversation right now. Daniel, welcome to the People's AI Podcast.
So much for having me, Jeff.
Excited to jump into it. I know you're a very big picture guy, so let's start big picture. What's your current take on where crypto and AI intersect? What would you say is real right now? And largely speaking, and we'll get more nuance in a bit, what's real, what's noise?
So the way I like to think about the intersection of crypto and AI, I like to start from what crypto is good at, because there is, as you said, a lot of noise in this space, particularly when you create this tornado of mixing with AI. So I think of the primitives of what crypto is good at. To me, there are like three core things crypto is amazing at. The first is aggregating talent and resources. The second is really verification. And the third is self-custody. Now, those are like the high level things of what crypto is good at. I think that actually unlocks different things that fit in with AI. So let me go through each of those now. AI obviously needs a lot of resources and it needs a lot of talent. We all know that training a model is insanely expensive, costing tens of millions of dollars at minimum. If you can use crypto incentives, you can get resource providers to contribute both their compute and their data to a shared cause. The way you do that is you give them upside in basically the model that they're creating, which gets over the bootstrapping problem associated with something that has insanely high upfront costs, which is training the model. Data has the exact same thing here as well. Verification, my second bucket, what that really unlocks for me is composability, and I can talk about this for hours, but if you want to chain things together, right now the way we do that is through we trust each party along the chain.
Just give an example of what that could be. Chain things together can be literal or figurative, especially in the Web3 space. So give me an example of what you mean by that.
Okay, so one of the best places, verification takes a lot of different forms and the composability unlocks, but we can talk like about agents because that's a big one, right? Let me paint for you a picture of the world where this kind of chaining concept matters.
Cool.
So right now, your experience on the internet, it involves you going to trusted websites, interacting with the website, you fork over some money, you pay for a flight maybe, you get an email, and you're just kind of like, great, that worked.
Right.
Okay. There's a couple things about this experience. You're in the loop. So you're actually the verification point. You're actually going and saying, I got that email that flight went through.
Right.
I clicked that button.
That's my credit card information. This is the expiration date. Right.
Exactly. So we first need to understand that in the future, when we're using agents to be performing services for us, you're actually probably not giving the loop. Okay. That's actually a key.
That's kind of the whole point. That's the feature, not a bug, of you not being in a loop, right?
Right. You want to delegate tasks to an agent.
Right.
Okay. So now picture this internet where you're having an agent that you're not in the loop to verify performing tests. So you need to know that it's actually doing the thing you say you're doing. But to a point, to a point, because I bet you a lot of your listeners are probably skeptical, because I bet you that if they said, hey, I want to use an agent to book a flight, they would send the agent on its way. They would get the email the flight went through, and they'd probably be okay with that. Okay.
Right.
Where I think you need agents with crypto and this verifiability and the composability, which was your initial question, is in this following scenario. First of all, you have to imagine in the future of the internet that there aren't human eyeballs that are part of the experience. And
Right.
so these apps are going to need to monetize with microtransactions up front. That means that literally agents are going to have to be paying for services up front. So if you wanted to go, let's say, send out an email to recruit for a job, right? And you wanted an agent to do that. Right now, you could go to LinkedIn and it can monetize in your eyeballs with an ads and such. But if your agent's doing that for you, it's going to charge your agent, just like LinkedIn charges for its API access.
Right.
So now your agent upfront needs to pay for something. It
Right.
needs to literally provide like 5 USDC or whatever to LinkedIn. Okay. Now, if you trust LinkedIn, you're probably fine. But imagine that you are doing this long daisy chain of an agent asking one agent paying upfront, who's asking another agent who's paying upfront. And you're going on and on and on with all these different agents that are performing all these different services, all paying each other up front. And the farther you get along in this chain, the less that you trust the agent, because you don't even know the
Right.
seventh agent in that chain. This is what I mean by composability,
Right.
and this is
Got
what I
it.
verifiability.
And so thank you, Sinj. And I do want to get deep into AI agent economy in a bit. Thank you for kind of clarifying that when you're saying these different links on the chain, not necessarily as in a blockchain, but different chain of
Yeah,
events,
sorry,
right?
bad term.
No. I mean, this space can be very confusing with this language. But to your point, there are maybe 37 different events that need to happen in a transaction. And we might get to a future where if the human is not in the loop, how do we ensure that between event 24 and event 25, the entities are proceeding the way they are supposed to? And crypto and blockchain can be very good at that verification. So that's kind of your second bucket, if I'm getting that right.
Yes, and crucially in this world, I think it's very important that none of the things, if you wanted to go and, let's say book a flight, and there were many agents along in that chain, you don't want any of those agents to get paid unless they all did the thing.
Right.
It's like
Right.
atomic in that sense. You
Right.
need it all to happen or none to happen. And you're forking over money up front, and you need a way to know that that party who's receiving that USDC to perform the service, this agent, isn't just running with your money, because you don't trust them. So,
Right.
so that's what I mean by like the verifiability, the composability, and chaining actions.
And presumably this can get very complicated. And to your point, there might be a kind of system of smart contracts that are all kind of interlocked. And you want, once all 37 contracts have been fulfilled, boom, then the funds are dispersed or something like that.
Exactly. It's like an escrow. Exactly.
Right.
So and it picks up on, it picks
No,
up
go,
on
go,
the
go.
same, it picks up on the same property that we talk about with smart contracts, where we talk about modularization, the ability to chain things, DeFi Lego blocks. This is all the exact same concept applied to agents. And I think a lot of people kind of miss that if the internet looks like this kind of daisy chain, why you need that when they do understand it, like in terms of like pure crypto smart contracts. And I find it interesting that people don't really connect those dots a lot of times.
Right. I do. Okay. So again, let's bookmark this down the road. I do have some questions about, could it be, is there a world where this could happen, where someone could use their agent to book a flight and just use their credit card, right? So I kind of want to explore that and see how, imagine these two competing scenarios and seeing what crypto AI's odds are against that other kind of mainstream scenario. But bookmark that for now. And then so that was bucket number 2, verifiability. Bucket number 3.
That was self-custody. And this is really the biggest use case to me is actually, we keep coming back to it, I apologize, but it is related to agents because
this is the year of AI agents, right? It's all everyone can talk about. So
people love their agents, Jeff. But if you picture, I really hate what I'm about to say because it's said so often. Agent with a bank account. Unfortunately, there's a lot of merit to that, even though it's trite, which is that if you're picturing, particularly in my daisy chain scenario, where you're the 34th agent, you're not part of that process. You've delegated to an agent within a set of bounds, and it needs an ability to pay, and agents need an ability to receive. It's really not nearly, you would kind of have to create like a credit system, like in an internal database. It's like very hard to imagine how you would do this actually without crypto, because Banking rails are not on internet rails. And if you think agents, their strength is their ability to interoperate between each other fluidly, you need the payment to also be on the same internet rails as the agent that's performing the services.
So, okay, maybe now is a good time for my annoying kind of gadfly skeptical question, right? And
Yeah.
believe me, to clarify, I am rooting for the world you're describing. I do think that's a fair skeptical question, though, to ask, okay, if let's imagine I am United Airlines and
Yeah.
I'm trying to play ball in this new world of AI agents. And I want to be with, I get that down the road, this is happening. Users will be wanting to use their AI agents to book flights, right? Why wouldn't I be more comfortable with the infrastructure and plumbing that is I mean, yes, maybe it's not as hyper fast, maybe it's not as efficient, but if there's like you have through some combination of the more traditional rails of whether ACH or whatever it is, right? You have banking, credit card, like there's an agent and there's in the same way that you mentioned trust earlier, like somehow TradFi has figured out like when I use my credit card at online merchants or I go in person, I'm not worried about it. I have trust that this will go through and my credit card balance will increase and I'll get the thing and so on. That problem's been cracked. It's been cracked in the real world. Why couldn't it be cracked in the same way in this kind of AI landscape? And we know that's where the trillions of dollars are currently, right? In more comfortable with those traditional rails. Kind of what's your kind of counter to that skeptical approach or concern?
So first of all, I want to say I am not, as I started with this, to me as an investor in the space, I'm interested in actually where crypto actually makes AI better. I
Yeah.
am not interested in just making up scenarios where I think it's better. So I fully appreciate the question, to be very clear. Your question, I think, is fundamentally like the world as we exist works pretty great. It's built up for many, many, many years. And why are we introducing this new primitive? It seems like a lot of work, and why? It's not broken. So I think to answer your question, if the world is just basically like 30 entities are trusted parties on the internet, and your experience online is just integrating with those 30 parties, the booking the flight example.
Yeah.
I don't think you need, I really don't think you need crypto. I really don't. Because as I was saying earlier, trust gets you pretty far a lot of times. In your booking flight example from before, just to reiterate, I trust my personal agent because it's, maybe it's run by OpenAI. The personal agent interacts with American Airlines agent. My agent has like basically whitelisted or provisioned American
Mm-hmm.
Airlines agent because it's a reputable brand. There's legal contracts
Right.
underlying this,
Right.
and everyone is kind of fine with this interaction. If the entire chain of interaction is go book me a flight, and those are the only two agents involved, maybe there's a case for using stable coins just because it's going to be much more efficient. But beyond that, I actually don't think you need the cool parts of crypto. I really don't. I think that's imagining the internet will look a lot like it does now, which it very well. But again, and I keep bringing this up and not to be annoying, but it's like, what if the internet looks like this? You have third-party agent developers. Anyone in the world can develop and, specialize in performing a very specific task. Maybe one developer wants to, let's give an example. Let's say you wanted to scrape blockchain data, right? Okay. In this world, you can build an agent that's your personal agent, and it doesn't know how to do that. And you could have a third-party developer who's like an expert in scanning, Etherscan, and you can have another expert who's another agent who's an expert in like, churning JavaScript code from the website into something like Python or something like this. Like all these highly specific tasks, and you have all these different third-party agent developers that are offering up these services, and you don't know them, crucially, because it's permissionless and trustless. And again, in my world, you're paying for services up front.
Right.
And you want to just do script, you want to get blockchain data for whatever use case. And you ask your agent, and it asks that agent, and asks another agent, asks another agent. You need some way, again, to ensure that everyone is actually doing what they're going to do. Otherwise, one of those agents that change is going to run with the money. So like that's the internet where I think you need
Yeah,
crypto and agents. And I sound like beating a drum at this point, but I really think that like that's the bet. It's the
yeah.
bet of like this bazaar of third-party agent developers.
I love that. I love the way you describe that. One thing you mentioned in the past, Daniel, is, and let me know if I'm off here, is that the concept of economic ownership and how that will be so relevant in this kind of new era that you're outlining here. Can you unpack a bit about what you mean by economic ownership with respect to this kind of emerging world of AI and AI agents, and then kind of how I'm guessing data sovereignty is part of that. I'm guessing that there are other kind of elements of this in this intersection of crypto and AI.
So the economic ownership to me most comes into that first bucket, which is the aggregation thing. Um, why does economic ownership matter? Let's think about a traditional corporation for a second. Traditional corporations have bootstrapping problems, right?
Hmm.
When they first start, I was a founder myself. You have no money. You need to go and do things, and you need to get other people to do it with you, including you need to convince yourself to do it.
Right.
So you have no money in the bank yet? You haven't gone to raise money from a VC. How do you incentivize people to perform work way like cheaper, which is basically for free? You do it through sweat equity. You
Hmm.
say, hey, I can't pay you right now, but what I can do is I can give you equity in this corporation. You're going to go do work for me, and you
Hmm.
get upside in
Hmm.
this future.
Hmm.
That's the concept of sweat equity. Okay, that's very effective at solving the bootstrapping problem of the corporation. Why am I talking about this? Because if you think about like training a model, particularly in open source, which we can unpack in a second, you have the same bootstrapping problem. You have developers who are contributing to the model design, but then they have this thing of like, wait a second, I need to go get millions of dollars in compute. I need to
Yeah.
go millions of dollars in data. And I can't get that.
The
I'm
barrier to
just a model
entry
designer.
is off the charts. It's kind
Off
of
the
a
charts.
yes.
You need to be a very wealthy corporation. So it's taking this sweat equity concept and applying it to the resource provider. You can go to the compute provider and say, hey, listen, I can't pay you right now because I'm just an open source AI developer and I
Hmm.
want to build this model and it's going to be amazing, but I just can't pay you. But what I can do is I can give you this token, and this token will represent the future upside. And instead of providing labor like a traditional corporation does, it would be amazing if you could just provide me your compute to train my model. That's what it fundamentally is. It's
Hmm.
really this solving the bootstrapping problem of giving ownership and upside in exchange for the resource. That is the exciting thing about decentralized training to me.
Amazing. One word that you mentioned earlier, and you kind of underline how important it is composability. Talk a bit, and I know that kind of folds back into our earlier conversation of verifiability, but I think that just from my cheap seats here, that feels like it will be super important as the space continues to develop and evolve. In that it's like I don't know one kind of personal take of mine, not to go on a little rant or riff here, is the space decentralizes one thing that's great, but it also seems very like scattershot and
Yes.
fragmented and siloed as well. And there are so many projects that are doing like sometimes it's hard to figure out which of these projects can all kind of snap together and work together like elegant Lego pieces, and which ones are like, oh, they're all trying to do the same thing and only one of these 40 will work out, right? And so I'm guessing that composability and interoperability will be a key part
Yes.
of making this kind of like this tapestry work, to mix like seven metaphors. How are you thinking about composability in the space, and what do you kind of want to see more of in the space?
Okay, so I think the composability piece matters. There's two ways that you can think about how we can get to like next levels of intelligence.
Yeah.
There's you can vertically scale. This is what the big tech companies are doing. They continue to throw compute and data at it, more and more compute, more data, and try and build the
Right.
thickest, deepest models that are ever built, and kind of hope that reaches super intelligence. That's the vertical
And it's
path,
also
right?
in a way, and even folks in kind of quote traditional AI, there are a lot of kind of skeptics, as I understand it, in this space now, saying it's almost a little boring in a way. I'm paraphrasing, but it's literally to this point, cool. Just throw data and throw compute into it, keep and hoping that there's a voila, it's just the ChatGPT 9 or whatever it is, right? So
Right.
this would be a very different approach.
It so far has not been disproven that simply more compute and more data I'm the double negative for killing me here. It seems to be that more compute and more data creates better models, which
Yep.
is like crazy a simple concept and crazy boring. By the way, a side tangent, one of the things that's amazing about crypto and AI right now is this quality of AI developers who are like tired of just like the
Right.
Web 2 machine and coming into the space. Some of my investments, Hyperbolic, Plastic Labs, Paralyses, are all like, I think, cracked AI founders that came into
Mm.
crypto. So really normatively, but anyway, I digress. Back to your question about why composability matters. So I was saying there's vertical integration, vertical scaling, just building the thickest, best models, and as you said, more compute, whatever. Then there's the horizontal, and this is where the composability matters. Like if you think of the concept of emergence, right? You have a bunch of different things that specialize in one very simple task.
Mm-hmm.
Individually, it's not that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you compare them all together, and everyone is doing their little piece and doing a very good job at that, and they can communicate between each other, you
Mm-hmm.
can build crazy interesting systems, and now you're scaling horizontally, which
Mm.
is what crypto is good at. If you kind of think about like it's kind of a little bit like a society in a way, right? Like we all have our little specialization interests. We all live in our little hidey holes, and we come out to the world, and we all contribute. But it's through this you get like literally a nation state. And I'm not trying to be too abstract, but that's kind of the bet on like the horizontal, more crypto angle of how you get super
I
intelligence.
love that. So let's have some fun here. Let's go there. I was kind of being the annoying person saying, "Oh, let's have some broccoli and vegetables," with being skeptical. But now let's have some dessert and ice cream. So let's say this all works, right? Let's say, oh, we've a year from now, 2 years from now, oh, we've the composability is happening. We're cracking codes. What would it actually mean? What will it what would the world look like if we get proper agent composability? What kind of new behaviors could emerge? What are some new use cases? How could the internet look and feel different? How would the world look different? What are some use cases that really fire you up and excite you?
I mean, I think what you're going to get is something, as I was saying, bordering on super intelligence, where you can ask software any arbitrary task, and if it can route it correctly between the specialists, basically, you won't even know behind the scenes what's happening, but each party is going to play their little piece in that. At the end of the day, you're going to get a result. And it's going to basically be ChatGPT, but way more flexible because it's going to have all these different specialists, but all these different specialized tool calls to allow you to accomplish any specific task. Like right now, ChatGPT is very good at like has some very limited tool calls and it can go and scrape the internet, and that's like people are like think that's an amazing experience, and it is. But imagine like you have like agents that are tapped into like specific databases and specific tool calls, and they can merge together, and now you just literally send off a request and behind the scenes it's just happening. Like it's just done. Like that to me is the world of this kind of emergent agent kind of system.
And what are some benefits of having that being done in this decentralized way, as opposed to just a scenario where it's just ChatGPT but better? It's ChatGPT 5 or 6 or what have you.
Well, I think we've already seen with the current internet what happens when you have monopolies form. And what they're doing is they basically serve as loss leaders to get customers in. ChatGPT is, as far as I remember, bleeding money right now on basically compute. And they suck you in. They put themselves between you and the end service you want, and they then extract, and extract value until they bleed you dry. I mean, if anyone has ever seen what's going on in the streaming space,
Yeah.
when we were fed our little, we got a little, the mouse was given a little cookie with Netflix, and over time it's just gotten worse and worse, and now we're basically in this disaggregated version, like this hellscape we're in right now. That's what happens when you have monopolies and centralization and closeness. The alternative vision is that like the software is actually given to the people. I know that sounds like a little bit fluffy, but it's like we are going to run headfirst into the exact problems we've created in our current existing internet, but the stakes are much higher when we're talking about literally the ability to access information being controlled by 3 to 5 companies. So I think it's actually monumentally important.
Dina, what would you say is still
broken in this space? Or if not broken, what needs to be fixed or challenges to overcome? Like what's holding us back from achieving this kind of vision you're outlining?
Okay, this is an excellent question. And it's one I don't know if a lot of people have really grappled with. So I've been painting to you, I keep coming back to this kind of modular, composable vision. I did it to you with both the specialized models, I did it to you with the agents, right? And I think it's a great vision, but it has core assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the core assumption is that when you horizontally scale a system, anyone can contribute permissions. Jeff, you could go run your own agent. No one needs to know who you are. You need some
Mm-hmm.
way to verify. Okay, but the problem that we have, and I don't think anyone's really solved this, is when you're performing tasks in the real world, it's a fuzzy verification problem. How do you know? Let's say that going back to my scraping example, maybe you, Jeff, developed the Etherscan scraping agent. What does it really mean that you did a good job? What does that actually mean?
Right, right.
Like, I can prove that maybe they're like a ZKTLS proof or something that you went to the website and that you pulled the data, but like actually proving you did a good job, that's a subjective question. That's really hard.
Yeah.
So, this is what I call like the fuzzy verifiability problem. Like if we want agents to be useful in the real world, we have to solve this problem that we need to make fuzzy work
Mm-hmm.
verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm hopeful that actually using AI itself as a neutral arbiter could actually see work, give it enough inputs, and it's intelligent enough. It could literally say, okay, this was done effectively or not. It's like
Mm-hmm.
basically like a judge. Like
Yeah.
it takes some fuzzy inputs and can give a discrete output. I'm very hopeful about that. I'm less hopeful about what crypto has tried many times in the past to solve the fuzzy problem, which is just purely like crypto economics
Right.
and basically like weighted stake. Like basically how much stake you have dictates how good things are
I
because it
mean,
always turns
they're
into a
deeply
mess.
problematic on a number of levels. You can easily imagine kind of ethical question of suddenly like, okay, so the majority of people dictating this outcome that's hurting other communities or people or so on. So it's easy to kind of like imagine very murky, concerning problems in that scenario.
100%. And crypto is a beautiful thing, but it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Crypto incentives are amazing at bootstrapping, getting people to your shared layer. They also bring out mercenary farmers who are incentivized to actually basically destroy your protocol and farm it. And when you have people in power and there's money on the line and they're dictating what is good or not, this fuzzy verification problem, a lot of times they're motivated to just take the money and run, particularly a system where you're often anonymous. So it's a very hard problem, and I do not know anyone who has solved it yet, but we need to figure out a solution for that. Otherwise, all the really interesting use cases are going to kind of be off the table.
Yeah, makes sense. As we wind down, last few questions for you. As there's so much hype and froth in the space right now. From your vantage as a VC, are there any red flags you see in crypto AI decks right now, or you're getting pitched all the time? What are some things you're like, oh, dude, this is no, no, no.
I mean, when the earlier in the year, I'm sure you saw with it was Age and Meme Coin Mania. I cannot even tell you the amount of decks I saw where literally the project had absolutely nothing to do with AI, and there was references to AI, and it was crazy. I think the biggest red flag, and I do still see this a good amount, although it's getting definitely better, are projects that are trying to shoehorn in really the crypto angle into an AI project.
Mm,
Like again, back to the first thing I ever said. For me, as an investor, the things I'm looking for is when crypto actually is useful to solving AI
hmm
problems.
hmm
If it's not actually useful, I just think you're going to ostracize users and just create a mess for yourself. And then the reverse is crypto projects, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of them just kind of like when they have a lack of product market fit, which is it's very hard to build a successful crypto company. They often just like point to like AI as the use case. They're
Right.
like, yeah, like it doesn't. We don't have users now, but like AI, and it's just like okay, but like why AI? And so that's the second thing. It's like the reverse of throwing AI into crypto, basically.
On the flip side, Daniel, what's a use case or thesis in a space that you think is still kind of underappreciated?
I'm really interested. One thing we haven't discussed at all is data layers.
Yeah, go there.
So Jesse, the founder of Variant GP here, his company was called Media Chain, and it basically was a data layer. And it didn't work. Jesse could probably talk to you for hours about why it didn't work. But crucially, all data layers that I've seen in the past, which just to be clear, I'm talking about, it's like applications are all speaking to the same exact data layer, right? They're all contributing, speaking to the same data layer. They've all put the burden on the user to go and provide the data. Like, hey, user, go fill out your name and these personal details, and then go to an application and ask the application to go integrate with you. Okay. But the problem in the past has been there's never been a great reason why applications want to integrate with you, nor a great reason why applications want to contribute their crown jewel of data to the shared data layer. I'm really excited about what's going on right now, particularly with a company I just invested in called Plastic, which basically they invert the approach. They're going to applications and saying, "Hey, you have this problem. You have an LLM component to your application. You have this problem. You don't understand your user. We build an SDK that will help you understand your user. So I'm actually going to solve a problem for you, like out of the gate application. Nothing about a data layer, right? So they go and solve this problem for them, and then over time they build really useful user representations. And now you solve the bootstrapping problem for the user. Now the user can go to any application and say, I'm useful out of the gate. Why don't you integrate with me? And then the application will want to integrate because it wants to solve its own bootstrapping problem of understanding its user out of the gate. And you can create this basically this flywheel. Like the TLDR is like, I'm really excited about the fact that crypto is trying to use going to applications first, helping them actually solve a problem, and then using that to kickstart bootstrapping the data layer, as opposed to what all attempts I've seen in the past, which is starting with the user and then going to applications. So I think it's a totally underappreciated area and one that I'm super excited about.
Love that. Last question for you, Daniel. Let's have some fun here. What's a wild future scenario that might seem far-fetched right now, but maybe you'll feel in 10 years in hindsight seem obvious?
I honestly think it's what I've been harping on, which is that the modular approach will win. Right now, there's this modular versus monolithic. A lot of people think that the monolithic is kind of run away with it. People are talking about how ChatGPT is eating the world and it's getting stickier and stickier and things like this. But I just think that it's very hard for us to conceive of of what the internet will look like and these kind of moonshot ideas. It's very difficult in the current moment. And I think that we are completely underestimating the power of permissionlessness and anybody being able to contribute their ideas and how much faster that can scale versus just the vertical approach. So I am not at all defeatist when it comes to this modular versus monolithic debate. And I think that people are really not seeing how the network effects of getting that going, of getting people to just contribute, of how that can take us to places we can't foresee right now.
Amazing. Daniel, so much fun. Thank you for all of your smart insights, both online and this conversation. Really enjoyed. Looking forward to chatting down the road. Thanks again. Really enjoyed.
Thanks so much, Jeff. It was so great to be here.
So there you have it. Thanks again to both of today's two guests, Alex Adagio, Investment Director at YZI Labs, and Daniel Barabander, GC and Investment Partner at Variant Funds. Really enjoyed both these conversations. And thank you again to my partner, Vana, whose mission is user-owned AI through user-owned data. Vana recently announced a collaboration with Flower Labs to build the world's first user-owned foundational model, and you can find links to that in the show notes. Thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time at the People's AI, please subscribe at Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the usual podcast places. And if you happen to be listening to this while you're still in Toronto at Consensus, swing by the AI Summit and say hi. Thanks again, and see you next time.